Now, as far as my researches go, I've not been able to find any Vedic evidence regarding the duration of the sacrifices performed by Manu, Atharvan, Bhrigu, and the other ancient sacrificers, except the Angiras. There is an annual satra described in the Shrathu Sutras, shown above. It is said to be a modification of the Gavan Anyanam, the type of all yearly satras, but we do not find therein any mention of the duration of the satra of the Angirases. The duration of the Gava Anyan is, however, given in the Tatriya Samhita. For present, we confine ourselves to the satra of the Angirases and have to see if we can find any other means for determining its duration. Such a means is fortunately furnished by the Rig-Veda itself. There are two chief species of the Angirases, the Dîrghatamas, which are called the Navagvas and the Dashagvas, mentioned in the Rig-Veda. These two classes of ancient sacrificers are generally mentioned together, and the facts attributed to the Angirases are also attributed to them. Thus the Navagvas are spoken of as our ancient fathers and as our fathers, along with Angiras and Bhrigu. Like the Angirases, the Navagvas are also connected with the myth of Indra overflowing Vala, and of the Sarme and the Panis. In one of these, Indra is described as having taken their assistance when he rent the rock in Vala, and in 5:29:12 the Navagvas are said to have praised Indra with songs and broken open the firmly closed stall of the cows. But there are only 2 verses in which the duration of their sacrificial session is mentioned. Thus it is said, "Here, urged by hands, hath loudly rung the press stone with which the Navagvas sang and sacrificed for 10 months. In the 11th verse of the same hymn, the poet says, "I place upon and offer to the waters your light-winning prayers, wherewith the Navagvas completed their 10 months. And again we read, "They, the Dashagvas, brought out or offered sacrifice first of all. May they favor us with the flashing forth of dawn." While in another verse, the dawns are said to have dawned richly on the Navagva Angra and on the 7-mouthed Dashagva, evidently showing their sacrifice was connected with the breaking of dawn and lasted only for 10 months. What the Navagvas and the Dashagvas accomplished by means of their sacrifices is further described. The Navagvas and the Dashagvas, who had offered libations of soma, praised Indra with song. Laboring at it, the men laid open the stall of the kine, though firmly closed. While in another place we read, "Where the friend Indra, with the friendly energetic Navagvas, followed up the cows on his knees, there verily with 10 Dashagvas did Indra find the sun dwelling in darkness." In 10:62, 2 and 3, the Angirases, of whom the Dashagvas and the Navagvas, or principal species, are however said to have themselves performed the feat of vanquishing Vala, rescuing the cows and bringing out the sun at the end of the year. But it obviously means that they helped Indra in achieving it at the end of the year. Combining all these statements, we can easily deduce 1. That the Navagvas and the Dashagvas completed their sacrifices in 10 months. 2. That these sacrifices were connected with the early flush of dawn. 3. That the sacrificers helped Indra in the rescue of the cows from Vala at the end of the year. And 4. That the place where Indra wept in search of the cows, he discovered the sun dwelling in darkness. Now, we must examine a little more closely the meaning of these 4 important statements regarding the Navagvas and the Dashagvas. The first question that arises in this connection is, what is meant by their sacrifices being completed in 10 months? And why did they not continue sacrificing for the whole year of 12 months? The expression, for 10 months, in the original, is shown, and the words are so plain that there can be no doubt about their import. We have seen that the Navagvas helped Indra in releasing the cows from the grasp of Vala, and in 1062, 2 and 3, the Angiras are said to have defeated Vala at the end of the year and raised the sun to heaven. This exploit of Indra, the Angiras, the Navagvas, and the Dashagvas, therefore, clearly refers to the yearly rescue of the sun, or the cows of the morning, from the dark prison into which they were thrown by Vala, and the expression, Indra found the sun dwelling in darkness, mentioned above, further supports this view. In 1:117.5, the Ashvins are said to have rescued Vandana, like some bright buried gold, like one asleep in the lap of Niriti, like the sun dwelling in the darkness. This shows the expression dwelling in darkness is applied to the sun, meaning that the sun was hidden or concealed below the horizon so as not to be seen by man. We must therefore hold that Indra killed or defeated Vala at the end of the year in a place of darkness, and that the Dashagvas helped Indra by their songs at the time. This might lead anyone to suppose that the Soma libations offered by the Navagvas and the Dashagvas for 10 months were offered during the time when war with Vala was waging. But the Vedic idea is entirely different. For instance, the morning prayers are recited before the rise of the sun, so the sacrifices to help Indra against Vala had to be performed before the war. Darkness, or a dark period of 10 months, is again astronomically impossible anywhere on the globe, and as there cannot be 10 months of darkness, the only other alternative admissible is that the Dashagvas and the Nashvagvas and the Navagvas carried their 10-month sacrifice during the period of sunshine. Now, if this period of sunshine had to extend to 12 months, there was no reason for the Dashagvas to curtail their sacrifice and complete them on only 10 months. Consequently, the only inference we can draw from the story of the Navagvas and the Dashagvas is that they carried on their sacrifice during the 10 months of sunshine, and after that period the sun went to dwell in darkness, or sank below the horizon, and Indra, invigorated by the Soma libations of the Dashagvas, entered into the cave of Vala, rent it open, released the cows of the morning, and brought out the sun at the end of the old and the beginning of the new year, when the Dashagvas again commenced their sacrifices after the long dawn or dawns. In short, the Dashagvas and the Navagvas, with them all the ancient sacrificers of the race, live in a region where the sun was above the horizon for 10 months, and then went down, producing a long yearly night of 2 months' duration. These 10 months, therefore, formed the annual sacrificial session or calendar year of the oldest sacrificers of the ancient race. And we shall see in the next video that, independently of the legend of the Dashagvas, this view is fully supported by direct references to such a session in the Vedic sacrificial literature. The etymology of the words Navagva and Dashagva leads us to the same conclusion. The words are formed by prefixing Nava and Dasha to Gva. So far, there is no difference of opinion. But Yashka takes Nava in Navagva to mean either new or charming, interpreting the word to mean those who have charming or new career, using Gva from the word Gam, to go. This explanation of Yashka is, however, unsatisfactory, inasmuch as the Navagvas and the Dashagvas are usually mentioned together in the Rig-Veda. This close and frequent association of their names makes it necessary for us to find out such an etymological explanation of the words as would make Nagva bear the same relation to Nava as Dashagva may have to Dasha. But Dasha, or rather Dashan, is a numeral signifying 10 and cannot be taken in any other sense. Therefore, as observed by Professor Lignana, Nava, or rather Navan, must be taken to mean 9. The meaning of Gva is, however, yet to be ascertained. Some derive it from go, a cow, and others from gam, to go. In the first case, the meaning would be of 9 cows or of 10 cows. while in the second case the words would signify going in 9 or going in 10, and the fact that the Dashagvas are said to be 10, 3, 39, 5 lends support to the latter view. But the use of the words Navagva and Dashagva, sometimes even in a singular number as an adjective qualifying a singular noun, shows that the group or company of 9 or 10 men is not, at any rate, always intended. Thus, when the rays of Agni are said to be Navagvas, while Adhigru is said to be Dashvagva. We must therefore assign to these epithets some other meaning, and the only other possible explanation of the numerals 9 and 10 is that given by Sâyana, who says, in his comments on Rig-Veda 1:62-4, the Angiras are of two kinds, Navagvas, or those who rose after completing Satra in 9 months, and the Dashvagvas, or those who rose after finishing the Satra in 10 months. We've seen that in the Rig-Veda, the Navagvas are said to have completed their sacrifices in 10 months. Sâyana's explanation is therefore fully warranted by the texts, and very probably it is based on some traditional information about the Dashagvas. Professor Lignana of Rome suggests that the numerals Navan and Dashan in these names should be taken as referring to the period of gestation, and the words Navagvas and Dashagvas occur in the Venidad in the same sense. Thus interpreted, Navagva would mean born of 9 months and Dashagva born of 10 months. But this explanation is highly improbable, inasmuch as we cannot first suppose that a number of persons were born prematurely in early times, and secondly, that it was especially such persons that attained almost divine honors. The usual period of gestation is 280 days or 10 lunar months. But those that were born a month earlier cannot be ordinarily expected to live long or perform feats such as would secure them divine honors. The reference to the Venidad proves nothing, for there the case of a stillborn child, after a gestation of 1 to 9 or 10 months, is under consideration, and Ahura Mazda enjoins the house where such a stillborn child is brought forth should be cleaned and sanctified in a special way. Professor Lignana's explanation again conflicts with the Vedic text, which say that the Dashagvas were 10 in number, or that the Navagvas sacrificed only for 10 months. Sâyana's explanation is therefore the only one entitled to our acceptance. May here be mentioned that the Rig-Veda speaks of 10 months sacrifice only in connection with the Navagvas, does not mention any sacrifice of 9 months. But the etymology of the names now helps us in assigning the 10-month sacrifice to the Dashagvas and 9 months to the Navagvas. For Navan in Navagva is only a numerical variation for Dashan in Dashagva, and it follows, therefore, that the Dashagvas did by 10s, the Navagvas did by 9s. There's another circumstance connected with the Angiras, which further strengthens our conclusion, and which must therefore be stated now. The Angiras are sometimes styled as Virûpas. Thus, when the Angiras are described as Virûpas and sons of heaven in 3:53-7, and the name Virûpas once occurs by itself as that of a single being who sings praises of Agni in stanza immediately following the one in which Angiras is invoked, showing that Virûpa is here used as a synonym for Angiras. But most explicit of these references is 10:62-5 and 6. The first of these verses states that the Angiras are Virûpas and that they are the sons of Agni, while the second describes them along with the Navagva and the Dashagva in the following terms: and which Virûpas were born from Agni in the sky, and Navagva, or the Dashagva, as the best of the Angiras, prospers in the assemblage of the gods. Now, Virûpas literally means of various forms, and in the above verses it seems to have been used as an adjective, qualifying Angiras, to note there are many species of them. We are told that the Navagvas and the Dashagvas are the most important of these species, and in a previous video we discussed the meaning of the adjective Virûpa as applied to a couple of day and night, and have shown, on the authority of Mahâbhârata, that the word as applied to days and nights denotes their duration, or the period of time over which they extend. Virûpas, in the present instance, appears to have been used precisely in the same sense. The Navagvas and the Dashagvas are no doubt the most important of the early sacrificers, but these two were not their only species. In other words, they were not merely 9-going and 10-going, but various-going, meaning the duration of their sacrifices was sometimes shorter than 9 and sometimes longer than 10 months. In fact, a Saptagu, or 7-going, is mentioned in 10:47-6, along with Brihaspati, the son of Angiras, and it seems to be used there as an adjective qualifying Brihaspati, for Brihaspati is described in another place as Saptasya, or 7 mouths, while the Rig-Veda in 4:6:1 describes the first Brahmana Brihaspati as 10-mouthed. We also have seen that Dashagva is also called the 7-mouthed. All these expressions can be satisfactorily explained only by supposing that the Angiras were not merely 9-going or 10-going, but Virûpas, or various-going, and they completed their sacrifices within the number of months for which the sun was above the horizon in the place where the sacrifices were performed. It follows, therefore, that in ancient times the sacrificial session lasted from 7 to 10 months, and the number of sacrificers, Hotris, corresponded with the number of months, each doing his duty by rotation, somewhat after the manner of the Egyptian priests, previously referred to. These sacrifices were over when the long night commenced, during which Indra fought with Vala and vanquished him by the end of the year. The word, at the end of the year, is very suggestive and shows that the year closed with a long night. Another reference to a period of 10 months' sunshine is found in the legend Dîrghatamas, whom the Ashvins are said to have saved or rescued from a pit into which he was thrown, after being made blind and infirm. We will devote a separate video later to the discussion of Vedic legends, but we take up here the legend of Dîrghatamas because we have therein an express statement as to the life of Dîrghatamas, which remarkably corroborates the conclusion we have arrived at from the consideration of the story of the Dashagvas. The story of Dîrghatamas is narrated in the Mahâbhârata. He is said to be the son of Mamate by Uttarathya, born blind through the curse of Brihaspati, his uncle. He was, however, married and had several sons by Pradvishi. His wife and his sons eventually became tired of feeding the blind Dîrghatamas, so called because he was born blind, and the sons abandoned him afloat on a worn-out raft in the Ganges. He had drifted on the waters for a long time in distance when, at last, the king Bali picked him up. Dîrghatamas then also had several sons born to him from a dashi or female slave, and also from the wife of Bali, the sons of Bali's wife becoming kings of different provinces. In Rig-Veda, Dîrghatamas was one of the protégés of the Ashvins, and about 25 hymns in the first mandala are ascribed to him. He is called Maimateya, or the son of Mamate, and Uchata's offspring. In the latter hymn, he invokes the Ashvins for the purpose of rescuing him from the ordeals of fire and water to which he was subjected by Dasha Tritana. Elsewhere, Agni is, however, said to have restored to Dîrghatamas his eyesight. That statement need not surprise us, as the achievements of one deity are often ascribed to another in the Rig-Veda. Dîrghatamas does not stand alone as being thus rescued by the Ashvins. Chiyavanya is spoken as another protégé of the Ashvins, and they are said to have restored to him his youth. Vandana and a host of others are similarly mentioned as being saved, rescued, cured, protected, or rejuvenated by the Ashvins. All of these achievements are now understood as referring to the exploit of restoring to the sun his decayed power in winter. But with the expression, like the sun dwelling in darkness before us in the legend of Vedanas, we must make these legends refer not merely to the decayed power of the sun in winter, but to his actual sinking below the horizon for some time. Bearing this in mind, let us try to see what inference we can deduce, so far as the subject in hand is concerned, from the legend of Dîrghatamas. The statement in the myth or legend, which is most important for our purpose, is contained in 1:158:6. The verse may be literally translated as follows: Dîrghatamas, son of Mahâbhârata, having grown decrepit in the 10th yuga, becomes a Brahmin charioteer of the waters wending to their goal. The only expressions which require elucidation of this verse are in the 10th yuga and waters wending to their goal. Otherwise the story is plain enough. Dîrghatamas goes old in the 10th yuga, and riding on the waters, as the Mahâbhârata story has it, goes along with them to the place which is the goal of these waters. But scholars are not agreed as to what yuga means. Some take it to mean a cycle of years, presumably 5, as in Vendanga Yotishka, and divest Dîrghatamas with infirmity at the age of 50. The Petersburg lexicon would interpret yuga, wherever it occurs in the Rig-Veda, to mean not a period of time, but as of a generation, or the relation of descent from common stock, and it is followed by Grassmann in this respect. According to these scholars, the phrase "in the 10th yuga," the above verse, would therefore signify "in the 10th generation," whatever that may mean. Indeed, there seems to be a kind of prejudice against interpreting yuga as meaning a period of time in the Rig-Veda, and is therefore necessary to examine the point at some length. That the word yuga by itself means a period of time, or at any rate is one of its meanings, goes without saying. Even the Petersburg lexicon assigns this meaning to yuga in the Atharvana. But so far as the Rig-Veda is concerned, yuga, according to it, must mean descent or generation or something like it, but never a period of time. This is especially the case with the phrase shown above, which occurs several times in the Rig-Veda. Western scholars would everywhere translate it to mean generations of men, while native scholars like Sâyana take it to refer to mortal ages in the majority of places. In some cases, Sâyana, however, suggests an alternative, that the phrase may be understood to mean conjunction or couples of men. This has probably given rise to the interpretation put on the phrase by Western scholars. Etymologically, the word yuga may mean conjunction or a couple, denoting either a couple of day and night or a couple of months, such as in a season, or a couple of fortnights, or the time of the conjunction of the moon and the sun, a month. Thus, at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the planets and the sun were, it is supposed, in conjunction, and hence it is said to be called a yuga. It is possible that the word may mean a conjunction or a couple or even a generation of men. Etymology, therefore, does not help us in determining which of these meanings should be assigned to the word yuga or the phrase Manusha Yuga in the Rig-Veda. We must find out some other means of determining it. The prejudice which referred to above appears to be mainly due to the disinclination of Western scholars to import the later yuga theory into the Rig-Veda. But it seems the caution has been carried too far, so far as to almost amount to a sort of prejudice. If you have friends interested in historical mysteries, share this video with them. It really helps us out a lot.